Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. In today's video, I will be showing you how to find the right squares for your pieces. And as you can imagine, in a game where basically the only thing that we have are pieces, this will be a fundamental lesson. I want to go from scratch. I really want you to understand deeply the fundamental concepts so then we can go to more advanced ideas. Let's start. So first, I want to speak piece by piece on what is the ideal situation for every one of the pieces. So I will go for the less valuable piece, the knight, then I'll go for the bishop, then the rooks, and finally the queen. These are the pieces that will be discussed in today's video. So let's start with the knight. So basically for me, a knight, it needs to have three conditions to be optimal, but also sometimes with two of the three conditions, it can work. So what are the three conditions for a knight to be ideally located? The first condition and the most important, absolutely the most important, is that it cannot be attacked by one of the opponent's pawns. So this is a fundamental condition because the knight is a very slow piece, and obviously the knight, as we know, is worth 3 and the pawns are worth 1. So basically, if one of the opponent's pawn can attack the knight, our knight cannot really be good because we will have to move it from that square. So if we want to find a really great square for our knight, it's very important that it cannot be attacked by the opponent's pawns. Okay? So this is the first condition, the most important one, absolutely. The second condition for a knight to be good is to be in the center of the board. Like in this case. In this case, the knight cannot be attacked by an opponent's pawns because black cannot put a pawn here or here. And the knight is in the center of the board. So this knight in the center will have a lot of activity. As you can see, there is plenty of squares that it can go to. And the third condition, and very important too, although sometimes this condition is not as important as the first two, is that the knight has to be defended by one of our pawns. This condition is not always, but it's also nice to have our knight guarded by a pawn, because this will ensure the knight's safety. So if a knight has these three conditions, it usually will be a really good knight. At least will be a very active and stable knight, which is important. Stable means that the knight is on a safe square where it cannot be attacked. And active, by the way, in this video I will be speaking a lot about three concepts, which for me are basic to understand when a piece is good and when a piece is bad. And these three concepts are stability, which means the piece is on a safe location; activity, which means the piece dominates a lot of squares; and utility or function. Let's call it function better, which means the piece has a job. The difference between function and activity is that the function is something that you can express with words. You can say with words what the piece is doing. Meanwhile, the activity is just the amount of squares that a piece controls. For example, a piece can be very active, it can control a bunch of squares, but maybe none of these squares is really useful. And the function, it means more like a piece can be maybe not so active, maybe it's not controlling a lot of squares, but it's controlling a very important squares. Very important square. And for me, it's important to understand the difference because in today's video, we will be speaking about it a lot. So this is for the knight. Now let's speak about the bishop. And I want to come to this position. So the bishop, it's a fundamentally different piece than the knight because the bishop can work really well in the long distance. And today we will be looking at a game where we will speak about the fianchetto bishop. By those who don't know, fianchetto bishop is when you place your bishop in this position by moving the knight's pawn and then placing the bishop in the initial square of the pawn. And I want to tell you that in general, the bishop is a piece that can work very well in long distance So it's a piece that also it needs stability as the knight, because it's important that your bishop cannot be attacked by a pawn, by an opponent's pawn. But it's easier to get the stability for the bishop because you can just put your bishop far away from the opponent's position. That is why usually the central squares are more are more worth to be occupied by the knight, because the knight in the long distance cannot work and the bishop can work in the long distance. So the bishops, you can use them like this. And in this case, this is an example of a good bishop because it's stable. This bishop cannot be attacked. This bishop is active. As you can see, it has a long diagonal. And this bishop also has a function, like it's controlling this important square, maybe preventing a break. It's attacking the f7 pawn. It's pointing directly at our opponent's king. So this would be an example of a good bishop. Now, let's speak a bit about the rooks. So this is an example on the rooks. And I want to speak about something which is particularly very important. In the game that we will watch, we will dive more into detail about the rooks. But I like two locations for the rook usually. I like either open or semi-open files, like this one, where there is no pawns, where we have no pawns, or I have another taste for the rooks preparing the pawn breaks. I like a lot to have my rooks preparing a pawn break, like in this position, for example. Instead of, okay, here we don't have any open file, but if we don't have open file, this can be a great alternative. For example, here, we can go with f4, and our rook can become very active and also can support or pawn break, which will give space for our pieces. So this is another example. Okay, now we will speak about the most powerful piece in a chess game, the queen. And for the queen, I really feel that it's really bad how most chess teachers they explain their students about the queen, because they told them, don't put your queen very active at the beginning of the game. But this is something that we really should understand very well. I mean, having an active queen cannot be a bad thing, because the queen is the most powerful piece. This is the piece that we want the most to be active in the game. This is the piece that can hurt the most the opponent's position. So the main thing about the queen is that it cannot be attacked by any piece. Like if your queen gets attacked by a rook, you have to move. If your queen it's attacked by a knight, you have to move. If your queen is attacked by a bishop, you have to move. So this is the main feature, that the queen has different to the other pieces, that the queen is the most powerful piece. So it doesn't matter who attacks the queen, you have to move it always. So for the queen, the most important concept is the stability. The stability of the queen, it's fundamental. But if you can have your queen active, like in the center of the board or near the opponent's king, which is one of my favorite locations for the queen, not necessarily for the other pieces, but the queen, it's a piece that can give checkmate in one move, in many different scenarios, in many different situations. So I will show you two good ways of placing the queen. So first example, this position. If we take a look at this position, we can make the move queen d4, and this is a fantastic move. And a lot of teachers, they say, don't centralize your queen at the beginning of the game. But this is a concept that we should understand more deeply. If we can centralize the queen, and at the same time, our queen is safe and it's stable, it's a great thing to do. This is a great, great, great piece. Great force. It's controlling the queen side, the king side. It's controlling also our own position. It's fantastic to have the queen like this. And the thing is that if we check each one of the opponent's pieces, I really encourage you to do this. Every time you're going to centralize your queen, check your opponent's pieces one by one and see which of your opponent's pieces can attack your queen. Of course, not the queen. I mean the minor pieces, the rooks, and the pawns. So if we check this position, this bishop cannot attack the queen, obviously, because it's a light square bishop, and our queen is on a dark square. This knight obviously cannot attack the queen because it's very far, and there is a mate threat. So this knight cannot move because there is a mate on g7. But even if the knight could move, let's say black's queen was here, protecting the mate, for example. Even if the knight could move, it needs 1, 2, 3 moves to attack our queen. So it's not a big deal. If he does this crazy maneuver, we will just move the queen, and he lost 3 tempi. And also his knight will be on a very bad place because it can be easily attacked by our pieces. So this is the first example. And the second example I want to show you is this type of queen. A queen that cannot be attacked by opponent's pieces, and it's near the opponent's king. For me, this is an excellent location for the queen, because if the queen gets here, it will be checkmate. If the queen gets here, it will be checkmate. So if I manage to bring another piece near the opponent's king, I can checkmate black directly. So the most important concept for the queen is to have stability. The queen cannot be attacked by any of your opponent's pieces. And then activate your queen. Don't be afraid. You need to learn how to activate your queen. Just that you need to do it carefully. Not always we can activate our queen at the beginning of the game. Not always. Actually, in a minority of the games, we can do it. Just that I want you to have the resource, and I want you to have the knowledge and the proper understanding of the concepts. Okay, now we will go to one of my favorite games to understand the correct placement of the pieces. And for me, the player that we will see in this game, Akiva Rubinstein, it's one of the most brilliant players that you should definitely study if you want to improve your chess. In this channel, we will be going through a lot of Rubinstein games, because what is the difference between Rubinstein games and other Grandmaster games? That Rubinstein games are simple. So if you study Carlsen's games, if you study Nakamura's games, these games are chaos, are very hard to understand for a beginner. And sometimes people, they try to explain these games, but they are explaining just maybe a 5% of what you need to actually understand what the players thought. With Rubinstein games, of course, there is also a lot to be explained and a lot to understand, but if we compare, it is far more simple than modern games. And in all the history of chess, for me, Rubinstein is one of the best players to study. I would say it's top 3, or it could be even top 1. The most clear player in history of chess, and a player that definitely in the beginning of the 20th century had the level of a world champion. Just he didn't have the opportunity to become world champion. Let's say back in the days it was more unfair, the system, like you needed to have a lot of money, not only the level. But definitely it was the best player in the world from, I think, from 1910 to 1915. So we will enjoy a lot with Rubinstein games. Okay, guys, I don't want to bore you with more history, so let's jump right into the game. So the game starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Both players control the center, both players develop the knight, pretty standard. And now bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez or Spanish opening. a6, Morphy variation, attacking the bishop. Bishop a4, knight f6, developing the knight. By the way, this pawn cannot be taken, just for you to know. Bishop a4, knight f6, attacking the pawn, d3. And now black protects the pawn, d6. And white goes with the move c4. So now I want to show you an example of a good way to develop the bishops at the beginning of the game, which is the fianchetto, g6. So in this position, the fianchetto is good because it's a slow game. Like white is really not playing very fast. White is moving a lot of pawns, and the center it's still closed. But at the same time, the center has the potential of open with the move d4. So probably in the future, actually in the very near future, as we will see, the center will open. And having our bishop in this diagonal, it's fantastic. The problem with the fianchetto is that sometimes it's a bit slow because we are already moving the central pawn, which gives us the opportunity to develop the bishop. And besides, we are moving another pawn to develop the bishop. So it may seem a bit slow, but we need to do when we can do the fianchetto, because usually it's a good position for the bishop. For example, if we go to the move 3, and here white plays the Scotch opening, after pawn takes, knight takes, if black goes for the fianchetto, this is a bit slow because this position is more open, and the development, it matters a bit more. So here, it took black 2 tempi to develop the bishop. Meanwhile, you can develop your bishop just in one move. In this kind of positions with open center because there was a pawn trade in the center, in this kind of positions, you should be a bit more careful when you make the fianchetto, because you could be falling behind in development. Of course, the placement of the bishop in fianchetto is fantastic, it's great, but you're falling behind in development and you should be aware. But in the game, it's a fantastic move, g6, because the bishop from g7, it will control the d4 square. And now white goes for the move d4. So now we are going into a more open center, and black just develops the bishop and protects the knight. So there is a knight trade, bishop takes. And now I want to discuss a little bit the move bishop takes e6, which I think is very interesting. Pawn takes. The thing about this position is that I feel black's pieces will be much better. Black pawn structure, it's damaged, but the black pieces will be much better. I will show you how. Let's say this, and this. Okay. First of all, both of the black rooks will have open files, which is fantastic. And second of all, our bishop is on an excellent diagonal, and our bishop is on a very safe square and very active, and also putting pressure on white's pawn on b2 and also white's knight. So our rooks are gonna be great, our bishop is great, and our knight, it will have a lot of great squares, like e5, it's a good square, c5, it's a good square. Our knight will have definitely a lot of potential, because these are squares where the knight, maybe it can be attacked by white's pawns, but that will create a lot of weaknesses in white's position. Let me show you an example. Imagine we go like this, and like this, let's say this, and this, and look at this knight. It seems like the knight is in a bad position because it can be attacked, but actually this will just give black a lot of tactics. Or imagine white protects this square first, and let's say we go with the rook to the open file and f4, 97. Now white's position is weak. I don't know if you take a look to my last video, but now, for example, this pawn, it will be a weak pawn. So if you didn't take a look at my last video, I really encourage you to go and take a look, because then you will understand that this is a weak pawn, and our knight can go to the c5 square, which is also good. So it's a position where all the black pieces are fantastic. And our queen can also be active, like it can go even to h4. h4 is a fine position for the queen, because it's near the opponent's king, and it cannot really be attacked by any of white's pieces. So really interesting stuff. White decides to castle, black develops the bishop, and just castles. And now f3, protecting this pawn. This pawn was under attack, so it protects the pawn. Knight e7, and bishop e3, and now knight e5. I love this move. So Rubinstein is having a great knight, great bishop. This bishop, it's also solid. It's not in a bad position. And we just need to activate these pieces. So white goes for the move bishop b3. And now b6. This is a move giving a bit of space to the bishop so it can return to the b7 square. f4. For me, a clearly mistake by white. Because even though you are attacking the knight will return and the knight will find an excellent square on c5. Because it's a square that is centralized, it's a square that is stable, because it really cannot be attacked by, this move is unreal, that white will make this move, because the c3 knight is hanging. So it's a stable square, it's an active square, it dominates a lot of different things. And it's also an useful square. It has a good function, which is attacking the weak pawn on e4. So really the knight there, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, as we can see in the game. And also now, after the move f4, this bishop is very happy after the move f4. Because now the bishop is directly attacking to this pawn. So now both of black's bishops are great, and the knight it will also be great. So you can see that Rubinstein is really finding nice squares for his pieces. Look, there is a bishop trade here, it's okay. Bishop c2 protecting the pawn. And now I love this move. Take a look at this move. a5. Fantastic. Why this move is good? Because we have the ideal square for our knight. Now we have a knight that it's very active, it's very useful. You see, it has a good function, attacking a weak pawn. It's very active, it dominates definitely a lot of squares. The only problem is that after the bishop trade, after this trade, after this trade, the knight is not really stable, because now the move b4 is possible for white. So to really make our knight a mating piece, we should go for a5. This is a great concept by Rubinstein. And now white goes for the move queen g4, and black decides to make a little combination. This combination I want to explain. This is what Capablanca used to call small combination, which means a combination that is not for winning the game, more like for obtaining a positional advantage. The idea of the combination is to get a positional advantage, and it's fantastic. Knight takes e4. So white takes with the knight or with the bishop. I think there is not a big difference. He goes with the knight. f5. Attacking both the queen and the knight. So the queen needs to move. Pawn takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Queen takes e4. And now you may ask, why this is a good combination for black? Because we are changing our fantastic knight, and we are also changing the opponent's weak pawn. Like in this position, I said this knight is great, and this pawn is weak. So why we are making this exchange? Because in the final position, in this type of positions with only queens and rooks, it is extremely important to dominate the open files. In this kind of positions, it's much more important to dominate the open files than in positions where there is knights, bishops, where there is minor pieces. The less minor pieces there is, the most important is to dominate the open files. And you may wonder, or you may ask, why it's like this? Because penetrating, it's very easy when there is no minor pieces. Imagine white has a knight here and a bishop here. And we have, I don't know, knight here and bishop here. Then, even if we have this open file, we cannot enter because white knight will be protecting this square and the bishop will be protecting this square and the knight will be protecting this square. So imagine there is a knight here in the red square and a bishop on the green square. This open file, it's really not a big deal. It doesn't mean that much. But the open files, when there is no minor pieces, they have an increased value. So Rubinstein decides to enter in this position because in this position, his rooks and his queen are really going to be much more powerful than white's. Queen f6, attacking b2. Fantastic. Initiative move. You improve your position, activate your queen, and make a threat. Rook f2, protects. Rook e8, another fantastic initiative move. You bring your rook to the open file, and at the same time, you are attacking white's queen. Queen d5. Queen f5. This is an interesting move. There is other ways of playing the position, like just doubling the rooks, and it's also very good. Doubling the rooks means placing both of your rooks in the open file, in the file where there is no pawns. But queen f5, it's an interesting move. Rook d1, and now rook e4. g3, and rook e8. And I want you to see this. This is fundamental. And especially in positions where there is no minor pieces, like here, having the open file, it means a lot. This is why Rubinstein makes this transition. And you should know that if you're gonna go into a position like this, you really need your rooks to have the open file. This is important. If you don't have the open file and your opponent has it, probably you're in trouble. If you have the open file, probably your opponent is in trouble. It's that important. So I think it's a fantastic transition. H5, and now rook e3. King f6, just bringing the king into the center. H3, and now h4. Already creating a lot of pressure and a lot of threats. But really the big difference in this position is the open file. It allows black's pieces to work really, really fantastic. So queen takes, pawn takes. And now you can see that there is another open file, there is another weakness. And this endgame is actually lost for white. All of the white's pawns are falling. Check. And now just trading the rooks and penetrating with the rook, attacking the pawn. It's game over. Okay, the game lasted for a bit more, but basically it's the end. So here just the f pawn will decide. But before pushing the pawn, let's first protect our pawn, and then push the pawn. It's GG. Okay. So end of the game. Black wins, and this game is a fantastic example. First, of how to play with the minor pieces. I really want you to take a look at this position. This is a fantastic example. And second, how to play with the rooks and with the queen. This part of the game, I think it clearly shows what the rook wants. And especially if you're going to get in a position like this, you should have the open file under control. Otherwise, you should probably try to avoid this type of position. So I want you to know that the pieces team in chess, it's really a subject where we can develop much more, and we will. This was just an introduction, and I really hope you enjoyed. And I wanted to tell you that I am making a full course on how to become a chess master. So this is the first part of this course, and I am making another videos. For example, in the last video, I spoke about how to never run out of ideas in chess. So I leave you this video right here so you can take a look. And remember, guys, if you subscribe to my channel, you support me a lot. I really appreciate your support. I really hope you enjoy the videos. I am very happy because I am receiving a lot of good comments in the last video. So it makes me more motivated to keep making videos and to keep improving the videos for you. So if you like the video, also leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. So I see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Ciao.